Joining us now in the studio is lawyer Jide Ologu to speak on the happenings at the Supreme Court and what it means for everyone, legally speaking. That is, we also have joining us from our studio in Abuja, Segun Showmi, and he's a stalwart of the People's Democratic Party, as well as Kasim Afegwa, a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress. Mr. Showmi, Mr. Afegwa, we thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. We also thank Jide Ologun, who is with us here in the studio.
Thank you, too.
Thanks again, gentlemen. We'll begin here with Mr. Ologun, our lawyer, or the lawyer here with us in the studio. So regarding the Apex judgment, it was, some would say it was, a 3-0 victory or a 2-0 victory, basically, on two fronts, now at the initial court and now at the Apex court. And so it was a double victory, so to speak, for Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Party, whose, presidential victory has now been affirmed on both counts. But for you, what stands out?
What stands out is that our jurisprudence, particularly electoral jurisprudence, is richer now. And I'm so happy that quite a number of citizens followed through because of the deep interest. And you must have heard the justices taking their time to rule out points that should be considered. Because when you talk about the law is about facts, it's about issues, it's about law, it's about your evidence and how you marshal your case. And some make reference to technicality, but technicality is part of it all. There is a time for you to do this. If you don't do it that time, who bails you out? And that is why you need to be proactive when you are going ahead. I quite appreciate when the Honorable Justice said that you come with a double-barreled gun in this situation and you don't shoot one and keep one back. So you come fully. And that is a way of saying that we need to pay more critical attention to how we drive these processes. And speaking strictly, since 1963, when we became a republic, Supreme Court became the highest court in the land. So after Supreme Court, everybody should just calm down and probably wait for the next elections. And I want to say, in agreement with you, that it's a double victory for the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Bola Tinubu, judicially speaking, and 3-dimensional victories at the poll, at the tribunal, and the Supreme Court. And he has called to the other stakeholders to join hands with him to move Nigeria forward. And I want to say that now we have strengthened democracy in Nigeria, because the Labour Party, APM and PDP and others could have chosen, like the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, did in 2015, that no, I won't go to court to say we are not going to do this. But now we are more enlightened. Look at the case of the status of the Federal Capital Territory. It was like a Titan status. But now it's been clarified again that no, it's just, like an addition to the 36 states we have in the country. So my advocacy is that the National Assembly should now study the findings and the conclusions from the tribunal and the Supreme Court and fine-tune our laws. Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999, as amended, says that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, the orderliness, and good governance of Nigeria. So which laws must we state clearly? So which direction do we want to move? Because one of the points I was raising frantically came to the fore also in the Supreme Court, which is that INEC has some discretions that you cannot take away from INEC, even from the pages of our laws. So how do we go forward to ensure that some of the gaps we have observed are not repeated in subsequent elections. So,
all right. That said, with your, initial remarks, let's also get initial remarks from our gentlemen who are standing by for reactions at our Abuja studio, beginning with Kasim Afegbua. What's your reaction to Thursday's judgment at the Supreme Court?
Well, thank you very much. I think it was expected because I didn't see any cause for worry, knowing or having read the judgment of the lower court, that is the Court of Appeal, the Presidential Election Tribunal, very detailed, judgment that was read for 13 hours, When you have time to read through, I didn't finish it, I read about 400 pages. You know that, yes, that the justices of the Presidential Election Tribunal did a very good job in analyzing and breaking down, the whole gamut of the petition. And so they have done a good job for the Supreme Court. So what the Supreme Court did was just to speak to those issues, and that's why they didn't spend so much time in their own judgment delivery. But I think we need to move on. Elections are over now. Yesterday was the final day for elections because in Nigeria, there are 3 categories of election. The one at the polling unit, the one at the collation center, and the one at the court. So those who complain about annulment of June 12th election will also are asking for another annulment, using the court this time. So for me, it's a welcome development. The president has spoken as a statesman, as the president of the country. He needs to move on. He said enough of those shenanigans, inundus, and we need to look at the bigger picture of how to, put the country, in the front burner, because there are quite a number of challenges confronting us. We need people on board, people who have ideas, initiatives, creativity, improvisation, and all of that, so that the people can benefit, from the Renew Hope agenda, which formed the fulcrum of the president's campaign manifesto and agenda.
All right, let me go to also our guest, Kasim, what's it called? Shegun Shomi of the PDP stalwarts. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a long time coming. The battle has been, fought and won. And your candidate, Atiku Abubakar, former vice president, also tried his best to, claim his mandate, so to speak. But then it is what it is, as we've seen. Would you also agree with those who have, advised, such as Ben Murebus, who told Atiku Abubakar to just, take it and move Nigeria forward and accept the defeat? What's your position on this?
Well, I think first of all, I must say very, very clearly that there are those who believe that the Supreme Court of any nation does not have powers to adjudicate in the best interest of the country, and that the Supreme Court is always unnecessarily limited to narrow statute interpretations or technical rules that allows them to say, I can see the smoking gun, but I can pretend as if it was not the murder weapon. The law is very elastic, and there have been members of that particular body in other very serious and determined crimes who will tell you that the law cannot bind a Supreme Court and prevent it from extending the law or extending the intentions of society or adjudicating in the best interest of society. I suppose that we would just say that our election jurisprudence has not reached that level where there can be a sync between the expectations of the mass of the people and what the law is saying. For instance, it's interesting to see that it was their discretion. They chose not to accept that new evidence that was presented before them. And we would just say, once a discretionary power is given either to INEC, when it also chose not to transmit election results in the way it had promised, and the discretionary power is also granted to the Supreme Court as to rules of how it accepts new evidence and does not accept new evidence. We can live with the judgment. We can really live with it. But for anybody to now, especially the president, to, in a bid to react to that judgment, to use indecorous, unpresidential languages like shenanigans and such, you just say, oh, indeed, how are the mighty fallen? What a great nation, who used to be great and has the potential to be great in the future. But for now, we'll just say, well, the final courts in the land have spoken. Has there been a miscarriage of justice? In my opinion, yes. Could they have done more? In my opinion, yes. Have they thought of the full implication of what they're sending to the larger society? In my opinion, they didn't think through it well. Did they have that power to have, come in there and try to say, what would the Socrates of this world do? What would Darwin do? What would other men in other climes do? Would they look for the narrow interpretation of technicality or open the Pandora box and say certain behavior and certain tendencies can never be the acceptable behavior in a country like ours? I guess we can say, okay, they have ruled. And one of those ones who always believe that there are three positions when you go to an election. There's the position of the, people who never, ever see anything good in the country. There's the position of those who want to win at all costs. And there's the position of the patriot. A patriot looks at the position, accepts that what has been done may not be exactly up to his expectation, but also understands that in the best interest of the country, since that is the final court, then we can say rest it. But let no one come and tell us that a country as large as that has potentially 222 million people, we can be excited about their inability to be brave. I think the court was not brave enough. They could have been braver.
But then let me just keep this on you. You said, based on what you said, you've actually aligned with the position of a patriot. So being a patriot is also the fact that, you've been called upon, your party as well as the Labour Party and all other parties who, lost in this race have been called upon to join hands as patriotic Nigerians with the current administration in order to move Nigeria forward. Are you saying that because you're not satisfied at the end of the day, you may not possibly, throw your weight behind the positive movement, the forward movement or upward growth of this country in terms of governance?
With the use of adjective, upward movement, positive growth and all that, that's not what we're saying. And I also hold the very strong view that democracy in itself does not even thrive when all parties and all persons and all political players in the country empty into the ruling party, which will most likely even, against their own interest, cause an implosion. But it's their business. Those who they want to steal, they've stolen them already. You can see how they go behind, take our members, complicate issues for each one week, who can make up his mind whether he's still a PDP man or he's not a PDP man. It's their personal and individual call. But some of us who have worked very hard to ensure that this democracy came into being, and some of the ones who are very young, who don't remember or are not really aware of what it took to get this democracy, will always tell you that opposition is not a dry land like that. Opposition is not hatred of the country. Opposition is deepening the conversation around democracy, ensuring that we put the feet of the ruling party to fire, and insisting that the integrity and the moral code of a nation must always constantly be improved and renewed. And if for today, these courts have said, oh, they won't take it, oh, it's late, oh, you didn't call the people you should have subpoenaed, you didn't front load them, they can write all sorts of technical reasons. I'll ask you, the tribunal at the early stages, if you had created another set of 5 judges, could they have, if they wanted, given a different judgment? You know the law is flexible. The judge has 3 eyes. The eyes with which he's seeing what is before him, the eyes with which he's seeing what he ought not to see, and the eyes that he closes his eyes completely to what the yearnings of society is. What is exactly the intention of the court and the law? The intention of the courts and the law is to make sure that people in society, politicians inclusive, do not work on technical rigmarole to prevent what is good order, good chair, and in the best interest of society. They have ruled now. I have come to terms with the judgment. I can even say, yes, I accept that you guys have won. I can congratulate my friend Kazim, and I can congratulate Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But I can also say, and definitely say, we do not think that the court, especially the Supreme Court of Nigeria, used all its gravitas and the things that men that are sat in that chair would have done to either speak directly to some of these issues, take into consideration the sensitivity of Nigeria, and accept that something did not add up there. And that's the way it is. There's no other court to go to. We're here. We're not complaining. We'll all have to encourage them to fix the country. They're talking a lot, but we're not seeing any great impact. Poverty is very high. The country is the way the country is. We can offer them some ideas if they are not too arrogant to listen. But bottom line is that let the country move on. Democracy came because we defeated the military ideas of staying permanently in power. We lost human life to this democracy. Some other leaders too are now pushing very hard to ensure that democratic culture is deepened. I pay obeisance to Atiku Abubakar. I wrote a piece for him where I said he's the Theodorian man because I knew that the virtue is not for the man who sits in one place and criticizes and points, but the one who dirties his face, who strives again and strives again and strives again, knowing fully well that whatever the case may be, we're pushing the envelope for democracy. I pay some obeisance for Peter Obi too, for the energy to be able to gather young people and give them a reason to believe in their country. And for whatever is what, I say congratulations to the man that has been given the responsibility. Right. Let us wait and see how well they can interpret. And to the PDP followers, you don't need to be upset. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to feel bad. You need to pull yourself together. We were in government for 16 years. That party has just been there for 12, maybe 8, now on their way to 12. If we work very hard and go back to the drawing board and fix our lines and strengthen our party and reform it and look at the numbers are there to defeat them. And I believe that if tomorrow comes, we'll do that.
Mr. Shomi, let's put you on hold, having had your say so far, giving opening remarks and, some form of reaction to yesterday's happenings in court. Let's come back to the studio to get more feedback from our lawyer here. That's Mr. Jide Ologun. And Segun Showumi used some words that I want you to react to in assessing the role of the eminent jurists yesterday, led by Justice Inyang Okoro. But then Segun Showumi spoke about, according to him, them not exercising their discretionary powers, and talking about them not possibly being brave enough to push the frontiers of jurisprudence. But then we heard the justices speak yesterday about the limitations on their own part, talking about this new evidence that the Atiku legal team, wanted to push forward. The Supreme Court spoke about the powers accorded to it under Section 22 of the Supreme Court Act, which said on a good day it had the powers, so to speak, to order the lower court to kind of, maybe vary the judgment. And if I could just read that section for some more clarity. Section 22 empowers the apex court to order from time to time the lower court to inquire into any question before judgment, which may include rehearing of a case. And, it also says that the law empowers the apex court to assume full jurisdiction over a case as if it was instituted at the apex court for the purpose of rehearing a matter or remitting it to the court below for the purpose of rehearing. But the court said it was not applicable in this case because time had since passed, even on the part of the lower court.
Fantastic pronouncement there. And let me say this. At the tribunal level, which is the appellate level, you had 5 justices. In the Supreme Court, 7 justices. So we are talking about 12 justices here. And if you look at Section 36 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it provides for fair hearing. So what has happened is that both the petitioners and the respondents, the appellants, they have been given the opportunity to present their case. And on the issue of the certificate, the Supreme Court is asking, when INEC published the form that disclosed all this in June 2022, what have you done between then and now? There was something I learned when in school, fantastic, that if you go into an examination, read the instructions clearly. If you are to answer 5 questions and you answer 2 sufficiently and you submit, and at the end of the day, you even forgot to write your exam number, then you now start shouting, the examiner doesn't like me. No. And as a lawyer, sincerely, I want to say that we need to give more. There are moments we advise our clients that you don't have a good case here. If you want to go to court, engage other lawyers. These things are clear. The rules are there. And how do you exercise discretion? In the best interest of justice. Who are the stakeholders seeking justice here? All the parties. If you look at Section 131 of the Evidence Act, it says that if you come to the court seeking some pronouncements and you are alluding to some facts, you have to prove your case. It is not the justices. They even said it. You had 21 days to file your petition, so you are coming at this. And basically, the Supreme Court is not a court of evidence where so you just discovered this. So I think I quite appreciate Mr. Showmi's brilliant submission about the future. You see, someone said, you win, you gain, you lose, you learn. And that is a principle in business. You see, and I have been saying, I will never be sensational or sentimental. Lawyers are not trained to be. So these things are there. And I'm again counseling. Please take the pain to read the submissions of these justices. The decisions of the tribunal were read for about 13 hours. I mean, it's still there. So these are issues. Then you now learn, okay, next time, what am I? If you are supposed to present yourself in a particular manner and you don't, who do you blame? For example, I've bought a ticket to fly to New York City from Lagos, and the flight is supposed to be 3 p.m. And I come to the airport at 3:30 shouting at everybody that, I have a ticket, I have paid for it, I paid in dollars. No, that's not the issue. And these are things that some ascribe as technicality. If your vehicle is a petrol engine, you don't say because diesel is liquid like petrol, you go and inject that vehicle with diesel. So these are issues. Right. Justice is for all. And you are to get justice. And on the final note on this point, let me ask this question. In the Bible, 2 children were brought before Solomon by 2 women, one alive, one dead. And the one who was making noise was the mother of the one that was dead. So imagine that their neighbors came with them shouting, no. The king had to sit back to say, okay, now, how do I judge this matter? And with the wisdom God has given him, he now said, go ahead and do this. And he was able to make the right judgment. I will always doff my cap for the honorable justices in Nigeria. And please, let's go and read what they have pronounced upon. They've given, I said it, at the tribunal level, we had nothing less than 80 senior advocates of Nigeria. I know how diligent lawyers can be. You know what I mean? So, and if you put the experiences of these 80, apart from the other lawyers that were with them, lawyers together, we are talking of over 100 years of practice experience. So what could have been done should have been done. It's as simple as that.
Well,
That's my position.
Let's go to our guest, Kasim Afebua, chieftain of the All Progressive Congress in our studio in Abuja. Well, in all of this, the opposition parties have been maintaining that when the PDP, as well as the other parties, PDP especially, went to Chicago State University to seek some of these, documents which they needed for the Supreme Court, that your candidates could have just, made it easy for them to access some of these if he had nothing to hide. But in all of this, was the APC unsettled? Was your party, ruffled in all of these processes? Or did you feel comfortable because you felt the Supreme Court had never, at no time in the history of Nigeria, removed any sitting president?
Well, Thank you very much for the question. I think let me quickly react to the issue of discretionary powers as it affects judgment dispensation of the Supreme Court or any other court for that matter. You see, you don't apply discretionary powers when it has to do with justice. You look at the evidence before you. Courts are not Father Christmas that will create something out of nothing. You see, when you advance your case, when you are trying to present a case to a court, you must do your due diligence on point of law, not sentiments and emotions. I think a lot of what transpired in the last 2 months, so to speak, both at the lower court and at the apex court, are just essentially media trial. Because if you follow the procedure, if you read through what the justices of the Court of Appeal and the Presidential Tribunal, what they wrote as judgment, if you read through, I think even lawyers of the other side, Peter Obi's lawyers and Atiku Abubakar lawyers, will concede that they did a thorough job. Now you are coming to Supreme Court. You said they should use the discretion to accept evidence. Supreme Court is a court of jurisprudence. It's not a court of evidence. If you say they should take it back to the lower court for trial, they will have surpassed the days which Section 22 captured very eloquently. So for me, if you look at the definition of when you try to say discretion, you are going to be introducing corruption into the process, because the definition of corruption globally is monopoly plus discretion minus accountability. So the discretionary power gives opportunity for manipulation, and that is what justices and the process of justice and the procedure of justice does not entertain. What you can do at best is for you to advance your reasons beyond reasonable doubt, so that every party involved will be so convinced that what you are talking about makes sense on point of law. Having said that, there was nothing to worry about in terms of APC or in terms of the case, because we knew that at the lower court, the emphasis was that President Tinubu didn't win. The emphasis was that the elections were rigged. Okay, come to court and prove this case. You couldn't prove your case. Particularly the Labour Party that didn't have polling agents in the 176,464 polling units. They didn't have up to 150,000. They had about 141,000 thereabout. Out of that figure, they couldn't even collate results at the polling units for them to present to court. They were waiting for IREF, and what the IREF did not do. So, in the absence of IREF, are you saying there were no results? That's what the court was asking. There were results. The APC, for example, knew about the outcome of the election the preceding day of the election, on the 24th, Sunday, because our polling agents had already sent in results from the polling units to our situation room. And that's what a serious party should do when it comes to election. As they are receiving, you snap, you send to your situation room. Then you collect. We did all of that, and we knew exactly that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu won the election fair and square. It may be agonizing. It may be a subject of lamentation for those who didn't vote, particularly in this climate where you have sore losers, people who don't want to accept that the process was free and fair. But for God's sake, in this same election, we saw 7 sitting governors losing elections to House and to Senate, and some persons who can call inconsequential winning elections into the House of Reps and other elections for that matter. So we may not have attained that excellence in terms of our election process, but for God's sake, to use one brush to tie everything negative is to miss the point altogether. So what I will advise is that in subsequent election, politicians must try to own up to the spirit of sportsmanship. You know, when you are going into an election and you know that only one person is going to win, allow that process and be part and parcel of that process, so that at the end of the day, you whether for good or for bad, accept outcome and let's move on. In other countries where elections are conducted, there are complaints everywhere. Trump almost brought down the roof. In America, we saw the Florida case at some point. We saw the Ohio case at another point. So the point is, because of the interest of the country, because of where we are headed as a country, if it is not your turn this time, it could be your turn again. But some of these arguments, talk, and all of that, for me, they are just meant to enrich the democratic process. If you don't allow people to talk, then it will be a monologue. So we need dialogue, we need constructive engagement, collective bargaining in the process of our democracy, in the process of our election process, so that at the end of the day, we will be richer for it. But what I want to advise is that politicians must learn to be sportsmanly, because you play a football match. Even Maradona scored a goal called Hand of God. They won the World Cup. But that didn't say that they should bring down football in the world and nobody, every other person should go to hell. It will be painful to lose an election, no doubt about that. But you have to come back home, do a reassessment, stock taking, and see how you can contribute to the process of enriching the process in subsequent elections and also deepening democracy in Nigeria. Because like Showumi said, people have fought to put the military back in the barracks for this democracy to come on stream. Out of this democracy, PDP has spent 16 years out of it. APC has spent 8 years there in the 9th year now. We've commenced the process of 9th year. So we have a long way to go. And if it is not you shouldn't say if it is not you, then heaven must fall.
Absolutely, Mr. Fegba. Thank you for that submission. But Mr. Shomi, very quickly, and based on what the lawyer in the studio and also my colleague Kemi asked earlier, I would like to put the question straight to you, because when Justice Inyang Okoro asked the question yesterday while delivering the verdict, the judgment, he asked this question, and it was like a rhetorical question, which I would like to put to you now, since you are there in our studio. He said, what attempt did the PDP make in obtaining the president's certificate from when INEC in June 2022 published the president form EC9 to 21st of March 2023, when they filed their petition? You know, like it was a sudden wake up that, oh, we have an evidence which we didn't present to the appeal court, why the PEPC. So why are you just bringing it now? I would like to put the question straight to you.
Thank you very much. You will notice I said the eminent justices were not brave enough. I don't pick words carelessly. Look, most of the things that have become law of tort, property law, and all of the opinions on jurisprudence has always been as a result of judges, especially at the highest level, having the courage to even make the law while they're in sitting. What I was trying to say was that if the courts, their eminence, now begin to say, what were you looking at when you did this? Why did you not do this? Why did you not do that? It simply means that they're trying to justify and rationalize a position they want to obstinately stick to. They could have also asked the question. We consider it a very major ethical issue that goes to the foundation of what democracy is. If we're talking about forgery, if we cannot ascertain, there are ways that judges can write these things. When you read a judgment, you look at the jurisprudence. You may not agree, and you don't have to agree, but you can say, okay, I hear what you are saying, I see your reasoning, but with profound respect. Did you read the works of Professor Reeds, a judicial authority in 1905, who says that the Supreme Court is supreme in the sense that it is not limited by any means to the legislative authority created by statute, but it also has the right to sit in a court and extend the law if it will be for the good of all. So I think that says it all. I mean, are we flogging a dead horse? They have ruled yesterday. We have heard. There's no other place to take it to. But the country has heard loudly. Young people have heard loudly. Our international partners have heard loudly. Those who use indecorous languages as their own sign of an olive branch, they've spoken. We will wait and see. It's like the rain is falling and you're thinking that it's going to fall on only your enemy. It's going to fall on your friends as well. It's time to do government. We'll be here in opposition. We'll set agenda for them. We'll call them out on issues. We'll bring them to the table on things that we know they're just promising and they have no damn idea how to do. We'll take them on the usage of plenty adjective but no growth. And then we'll see how far we can go. And you see, my charge is to the Nigerian people, and the young ones especially. You don't need to bring down the roof of the country or destroy the little we've created. You don't need to be so angry. If you are truly, truly angry, where you're supposed to make them pay is at the next election. You have an election in Kogi. There's no reason for you to go and allow the status quo to remain. You have an election in Imo. There's no reason for you to allow the status quo to remain, especially when you are seeing that maybe they want to keep doing, take it, snatch it, and run with it. These are not the kinds of things. You see, that office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and even the democratic conversation itself, is supposed to be so elevated to such a point that nobody really tries to, pretend as if we can't find the glove of O.J. Simpson didn't fit, even when we know that the wife is dead.
Right. I appreciate the point you're trying to make, Mr. Showumi, but I still want, some form of clarity, more clarity from your end, regarding what you could call the party's limitations. You've spoken about, the judiciary and where you feel the judiciary could have come in. But, that remains a debate, and the law is the law as we speak now. And that was what the justices stood on. But as to the failings which the Supreme Court established on the part of your party, first, regarding the new evidence that the PDP sought to bring in, especially on that issue, and the roles the Supreme Court felt the PDP and its candidates could have done. Even the lawyer here said from the point when INEC had even released credentials, names, particulars of all candidates, it had also given parties, opposition parties, the leeway to explore whatever they may want to use and boost their arsenal, so to speak, at the court. So explain to us this issue of the failings of the PDP in pushing its case, bringing forth the needed evidence within the needed time.
Okay, thank you very much. Even that, one of the things that, blindsided all the other parties is the excessive delay and annoying holding back of assent to sign the 2022 Electoral Act into law. So the former President Muhammadu Buhari, for reasons best known to him, had almost come to the end of his 8 years before he was signing it. People were reacting to a new law without having enough time to read and understand it. That could be responsible for some of these things. But it doesn't matter. That if we can just keep that act to be stable, and we take some of the lessons we've learned from this one, and then we go into the next process, because it's always a continuous improvement anyway, then you will see that we will not, some of those things that appeared like slips, they won't be. And I want to say something to my friend Kazim. Look, if Labour Party didn't have all the agents that they needed to have, that doesn't mean it's going to be like that in the future. It was a fairly new party. They got a lot of organic energy. You have to kind of like envy them because you know that they can only get growth. And those who are maybe going to be predictably a one-term presidency, they better not laugh too much. The 8 years of Buhari flew by in a wink of an eye. How much more? Almost 6 months already, in my opinion, wasted on rigmarole. Plenty talk and no growth. The economy is bad. The whole thing is that. But let's just say, let's leave what we cannot change. We cannot change that the Supreme Court has ruled. And in dignified opposition, I have raised and offered them the congratulations that they deserve. But I still hold very strongly that the judges of the Supreme Court were not brave enough. They could have been braver. There is enough authorities in the English law, which we got our law from, which says that when the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, is sitting in court, it has enough powers to even make laws while it is still trying to rule. So what they're saying in essence is that if the Supreme Court could not change and move and stretch the jurisdiction of the law, then it means that the law is statute and the law will not grow. So we cannot always insist that it is legislators alone that can give us laws and interpret laws, and the law must always look for good conscience and what is the best interest of society. On this day, they have given the garland to the APC and Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I congratulate him. I congratulate all their own people, their followers and their fans, and I say to my own people, better luck next time. Let's just keep focused. We are the Theodoran men of this era. We are the ones who fall short, stand up, dirty ourselves, mind ourselves, only because we know that in just that one moment, even while we're doing it, we're braver than those who cannot really tell us precisely where they graduated and who gave them the certificate. QED.
let's come back to the studio and, and get some more contributions from, the lawyer with us, Mr. Jide Ologun. And Ibrahim spoke about a trend, and that was an apt point that, over the years, the Supreme Court, all presidential elections, tribunals, cases, that is litigation surrounding presidential elections, especially end up at the Supreme Court, and there remains a pattern. And you've spoken about this, earlier when the Court of Appeal, gave its verdict on at the first round of this dispute, and now that the Supreme Court has also had its say. But explain to us the legal implications or the legal dimensions of how, as at now, we still have, the Supreme Court, maintaining a pattern or not overturning or upholding elections of, the presidential elections in this instance.
What you feed in determines what you bring out. Now, let me start by saying that Section 65 of the Electoral Act opens the gate for judicial interventions. Judiciary has very concern about elections. And the precedent of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, we emphasize that he decided not to go to court. But under the section of the law I just quoted, if you are not satisfied with the final result, you can go to a court of competent jurisdiction or to the tribunal, which they have done. And the decisions from this tribunal or the Supreme Court will be based on how you marshal your case. Look at the case of Oyetola and Adeleke in Osun State. The tribunal upturned the victory of Adeleke, and they proceeded to the appellate level, where it was, the victory of Adeleke was confirmed. It's all about how you can push your case. And the Supreme Court has made it clear that you cannot impose jurisdiction. Neither can you impose discretion on the court. And I fully appreciate when the Supreme Court was, addressing the issue of the status of Abuja, that in interpreting statutes, you should not be myopic.
And not selfish.
Exactly. You don't give selfish interpretation. Let me say this clearly. I do not sympathize with politicians. If Labour Party won, APC and PDP are likely also to rush there. But please, let's calm down. And I'm advising, you may even set a day aside. I love knowledge. Read the pronouncements of these justices. That's why I started by saying 12 justices for that purpose. Go and study who they are. You want to talk about ethnicity, they are spread across. You want to talk, what you want to say about, and what you bring to them is what they will interpret. The judiciary interprets the law. The legislative arm makes the law. You see, these are issues. But on the scale of perception, I'm on the same page with the different perceptions of the people on this matter, because your perception is fueled by your bias. And so you expect that the Labour Party may not be comfortable with the decision, APC may be comfortable with the decision and everything. And again, let politicians learn. Now, Wike is occupying a special position in the political space in the country. What led to it? I don't like palliative approaches to issues. What happened within the PDP that their strong stakeholders decided to become who they became in supporting another party? And again, let's learn about a new advent in the country now. So how has it come that somebody from another party is given a principal position in this party. These are
right.
issues of concern.
Mr. Ologun, we'll build on that point. That's also another interesting twist that we have seen so far, and we will build on it. Gentlemen, Mr. Safegwa, Segun Sowunmi, and here in the studio, Jide Ologun, we will continue our conversation after this break. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Thanks a lot for staying with us, and special thanks to our discussants that have been with us since the beginning of the show, Segun Sowunmi, Kasim Afegwa, who have been standing by for us from our Abuja studios. We thank you very much for your patience. And here in the studio, Jide Ologun, lawyer, giving us perspectives regarding the legal dimensions and implications that formed the rationale of the justices. And of course, there is the bigger picture as to the way forward, and that is what we will be spending time to talk about during the remainder of the time that we have left on the show. Gentlemen, once again, thanks for standing by, and I want to continue from here in the studio, Mr. Ologun, and a lot has been said about the roles of the lawyers and how they presented their cases. Of course, the politicians handed over, so to speak, to the lawyers. But then the question must be asked, and you're a lawyer. I don't know what you make of this, but in terms of identifying bad cases, turning them down, because we did see rhetorical questions asked by the judges, to the legal team of the main opposition parties who had, brought in their appeals, so to speak, as in what were you expecting us, the Supreme Court, to have done? There were so many issues, but, primarily, what was wrong with these two petitions of the Labour Party, or these two appeals of the Labour Party and the PDP? And how do you explore the roles or otherwise that the legal team may have, failed to act on?
Paraphrasing Elder Clark, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, I believe a greater due diligence could have been given to these matters, and the justices took their time to amplify those aspects. And I think going forward, lawyers should learn from that. And the fact that you are going to present your case for a judicial intervention, you are the one to prove your case. And in litigation, your case will either succeed or crash on the strength of how you present your case before the court. And on whether some cases are bad, I've said it on a lighter mood somewhere, that there may not be a bad case for a lawyer, because lawyers don't lose cases. The way you really look at it is the clients that lose cases. I recall a time when the lawyer came and he was shouting at me, and I asked him two simple questions. Is this your case? He said no. Is it my case? He said no. We are representing clients. Why are you shouting at me? And I have also advised clients, in this age and time, without being a lawyer, you can conduct a search before you go on a litigation trip to look at some precedents. Okay, what are similar facts to my own facts? What am I expected to do? Even if you still need to engage a legal practitioner to represent you so that you know whether to go or not. But having said this, I must commend all the stakeholders, because the jurisprudence of this country, particularly electoral jurisprudence, has been enriched, whether some choose not to appreciate that or not. And of course, you listen to the remark on behalf of ECOWAS. So by and large, going forward, like the elders say, that it's better to measure 10 times and cut once than to measure once and cut 10 times. So if you are going for litigation, get all your materials ready. I mean, there had been cases involving big party on the other side, making noise and everything. But we were taught in law school that you keep your gunpowder dry. So, and when you know when to release, you record victory. So that is it. So, and let me also underscore this. The judiciary is always waiting for consultation. Judiciary is not determining the results of elections in Nigeria. If politicians don't go to the judiciary, they won't come. So that is it's an established issue. And we look forward to a time in the future when our electioneering processes will get to the level where there may not be a need to go to the courts. But whether lawyers will like that or not.
That's right. Let me go to Abuja to Mr. Afegbua. Thank you so much for your patience on the show. And we are looking at way forward. Even the PDP stalwarts in the studio right there beside you also alluded to the fact that being a patriotic Nigeria is what is paramount. But then the oppositions, in other way, in other situations have maintained that they've accused or alleged that the president is not a Democrat that he claimed that he has been, because if he was a Democrat, certain things wouldn't have happened, et cetera, the way the oppositions wanted to. But they said that if he wants to build a government of national unity, nay, national competence, then how would he do that if he is not a Democrat? I would like you to speak to this.
Well, I think I listened to one of your is it commentator now from Kwara who was calling on Atiku Abubakar to embrace the government and let go of this case. Atiku Abubakar has no other option. He has come to his political apogee, so to speak, because having put in all the energies that should have been invested in some other productive engagements into this case, as if there will be no tomorrow. I think the Apex Court is the court of final jurisdiction on issues such as this. That is the end of the road. He has an option to elope to Dubai, his habitual place. That won't be a bad idea. But the point must be made. I would rather want to tap on the initiatives and resourcefulness of vibrant young minds like Showme here to add value to national conversation that will help to deepen democracy than to waste precious time for anybody calling on Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to come and embrace government. They have exhausted all their energies, himself and Peter Obi, so I wouldn't want them to even be part of the government of national competence. Whether you call it national unity, it doesn't make any difference. We already have Yeson Wike, who is the FCT minister. The PDP knew from day one that they were going to lose this election because the candidate displayed uncontrolled arrogance to the point that he had to, ignore 5 governors, G5, in the contest for the votes, in this last election. You can't do that as a politician who wants to win votes. You ignore the support, participation, involvement of 5 sitting governors. No, that was taking the handshake beyond the elbow in terms of electoral fortunes and garnering votes in an election. But having said that, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu knows exactly that there are challenges in the country. That is not in doubt. He has said it repeatedly that he inherited both the assets and liabilities of his predecessor. And so you don't expect him to begin to say, my predecessor did this, my predecessor did that. But thinking outside the box is what is required, what is necessary. At least the needless distraction which the case presented has been settled now. And so we are expecting that there will be more focus on governance, issues of thinking outside the box to get policies, framework, policies, direction that will respond directly to the gloomy economic situation we'll find ourselves. Insecurity, and I think the army, the police are doing quite a lot now. We don't hear too much about banditry and all, and Boko Haram and all that. Life is returning to Borno. And it is not yet to Huru, but we'll have to sustain some of these efforts so that the better for the country and ability for people to also take up their legitimate aspirations without let or hindrance. So Tinubu alone will not do this job. He has set up a team. He has his lieutenants. We are expecting that these lieutenants will also key into the Renew Hope agenda, put into practice some of those lofty ideas in that document and see how they impact on the well-being of Nigerians. But it's our country. We must invest in it. We must invest, hope in it. We must continue to, encourage conversation, national dialogue, to build national cohesion so that together we can sing Uhuru when the time comes. Of course, elections are in another 3 years to be in preparation for another round of elections. We want to advise the PDP to put its house in order because we need a vibrant opposition for the ruling party to sit up in doing things. So, because as it is now, PDP is largely indisciplined. What they ought to do, they won't do. They are playing politics of individualism instead of politics of collective engagement. And so if they are able to put their house in order, including Labour also, Labour is having crisis of leadership. The one you call the chairman of the party may not necessarily be the chairman. Pampa has been recognized duly by the courts as the authentic chairman. Abure is still holding steam and all that. You just need to put your house in order because these are persons who say they wanted to be president of Nigeria. So they should be able to run a system, a political party system that recognizes excellence, that recognizes due process, rule of law, so that when they are talking from the point of view of moral etiquette and not necessarily just criticizing for the sake of criticism. All over the world, opposition is an integral part of the democratic process, and so I want a vibrant opposition to be able to put APC on its toes so that we can, collectively drive the wheel of progress and add value to the commonality of our collective existence.
Thank you very much for staying with us. You're watching TVC Breakfast, and we've been dissecting crucial elements that were established in Thursday's judgment by the 7 justices of the Supreme Court, now reaching a finality regarding tussles surrounding the presidential election, and the victory of Bola Tinubu as president has now been affirmed at the apex court stage. Let's bring in Segun Showunmi now to, looking at, the way forward. And one interesting thing played out in court yesterday. Nyesom Wike, a former PDP governor, who maintains that he still remains a member of the PDP, but of course he's serving in the Tinubu administration as FCT minister, and of course being a lawyer and other factors, he was in court. Mr. Showunmi, I wonder what you make of this. Also, Doyediri, governor of Bayelsa State, made the news yesterday. He was at the presidential villa to extend felicitations to the president, as well as Ademola Adeleke of Osun State, who also had warm congratulations on his X handle, congratulating the president. In terms of the way forward and how this can deepen our democracy in Nigeria, what's your take?
Well, first things first, political parties are made up of different sets of personalities. And there are some tendencies that will be personal. And within the rights of personal human beings, everybody can do whatever they like. You can, I can, they can. And some of them are doing that. But there's also the concept of seeing the party as a tribe, which then seeks to say what is in the best interest of the perception of the party. And of course, when an election is truly over and the judgment has been given, there's a high ground of the patriot. The patriot is not someone who did not understand that there were scars or that there were mistakes or it could have been better or I have my suspicion. No. A patriot is someone who considers everything and then says, okay, democracy itself is a promise of termed election. Therefore, we do not have the burden of monarchy where we have to wait for somebody to die, nor the burden of military dictatorship where we have to wait for someone to help us do it through the back door. Democracy as an ideal has given us the opportunity to keep working at our national development in such a manner that the conversation is deepened from both sides. I don't expect that any real patriotic Nigerian will want the ruling party or the government to fail. That doesn't add anything because whatever problem they don't solve is a problem that is still waiting to be solved. Now, and I don't expect any opposition party to think that the only way to be a democratic party or to exist is to run into the villa and start genuflexing, lying all over the place like very, very imbecilic worms just because a judgment has not favored them. You should have the fiber and the dignity of standing, and some of us will do that. In terms of what I think the way forward should be, first for the country, I think that the APC government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu needs to understand the only thing that allowed them to escape the wrath of the Nigerian people relative to their underperforming activities is the entertainment and the argument that was created by the court. That's gone now. Therefore, going forward, the only conversation we're going to have on the table is the price of the currency, the price of living standard, inflation, and all such important issues, so that the APC presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu will not give us the impression that the 8 years that their ministers and everybody say was so bad and all the growth was lost was not by APC. That point must never be allowed to escape the consciousness of the people. They did not get a country that was this tattered. They created it by their 8-year rule of their last president, and they are, in my opinion for now, they are still speaking in prose. We haven't seen concrete low-hanging fruit. You can't come and tell me that your low-hanging fruit is the fact that you burden the Nigerian people with subsidy, and therefore you have a lot more naira that has very little value. We can't say that. You can't come and tell us that your idea of low-hanging fruit is that you appoint some of them good, but mostly lackluster ministers, and you say, you've seen cabinets before in this country, compare them to themselves. You can't tell me that your idea of low-hanging fruit is that you bring the media, you do some paparazzi work, and you say that, no. The only way we're going to measure them is with the way we're feeling. What is the level of inflation? Can people eat? That business of taking 25,000 naira, sitting in the villa, cutting big checks because of 25,000 naira. Someone that is coming from Kano would have already spent all of the money on transport. And Nigeria, we will not, those are not the way we think. And the fact that they are just telling us today they will get us $3 billion. Tomorrow it's going to be $10 billion. Next week it will be $100 trillion. They can play with words, but we'll be looking for practical steps. And some of the things we can do, we'll be giving them some small ideas. If they are not too angry with our voices, they can be taking it. For instance, I was very disappointed that they went to the United Nations and I didn't see them have any serious side meetings. They could have just called us. We would have given them side meetings with a few world leaders that they will give it to them. They have a lot of debt issues. We think that they can negotiate with some of our friendly countries who are willing to buy our debt and give us some moratorium so that there's a headroom for us to breathe. We know that there's a lot of work for them to do. But even more importantly, the pain of this, their victory for me, is that they will not have the opportunity, the energy, and the intention to audit the immediate past government in a critical manner. Why do I tell you this? Because the only reason why our country is not making as much progress relative to the hope of the people is that we have not instituted a concept of consequence. You can't run a country without consequence. There has to be consequences for action. There has to be consequences for misdirection. You can't paint another country's plane, bring it into our country, then today nobody's talking about Air Nigeria, nobody's asking for the money. You can't do that. You can't keep the EFCC man, Bauer, locked in somewhere for days on end and just release him. You've not told us why you had him. You've not told us what he's done. You've not told us why you have to even infringe on his fundamental human rights to that level. You have not told us that. You can't tell us that your concept of reforming a central bank is that in one sweep, you are taking away all the deputy governors, people who have internal experience. You are taking away the governor, and then you are bringing completely new hands who, at best, their best credential is they were middle-level banking officers in some small banks abroad. Look, we are going to bring opposition work to them. We will just begging people in the media to give us enough space, lest the media becomes even as guilty as the ruling party. If Nigeria works under them, it's working for me, it's working for you. That's that. For the political party, my PDP now, you see, I have agonized much at how a 25-year organization seems to not understand that you can't be assuming that you're going to win an election without science. There's a science to win an election, and just to make it clear, in the last couple of years that I've been in democracy, 24 years now, There are some areas that you can say these are APC controlled areas where they have strongholds. There are places who say these are PDP stronghold or used to be PDP stronghold. There are areas that swing. Any political party that makes a mess of his own stronghold cannot, he must not understand that he's risking his skin. The PDP cannot be a political party that if you don't have your way, the next thing is the high road. Whatever it is that people want to say about the management of the 5 gentlemen, you cannot say that whatever was their problem could not have been problems for another set of 10 or 15 or 20 gentlemen in the APC. Why did the ones that bought the form in APC, why were they strong, disciplined enough not to implode their party? Why did the overfed 5 ones in our own party, why did they think that it makes a lot of sense to them to go and take minister when they could have even been the ones that are in charge of an economy? How does that make sense to them? And now that they've done that, okay, fine. That's as a reaction of they are angry, they are not happy. How do we go forward? If you want to leave PDP, please leave. People that have stayed in that state have left the party before. It didn't make much. The party will regurgitate, reform itself. But what is the problem of the party is that you cannot confuse our followers. In 1 minute, we are trying to drag you back. In another minute, we are running back. That's not the way. So we think we need to draw a line now.
I have to jump in because of our time, and we need to manage time. And you've really made very significant points. If you can hear me, Mr. Ashomi. What you've raised some allegations, as regards the current situation of the Naira and governance of the APC. And I would like Mr. Our guest there in Abuja, Mr. Kasim Afegbua, to react to some of these issues. Mr. Kasim, if you can hear me, he talked about the dollar, having crashed, against the Naira having crashed against the dollar. But then some also argue that this is not a new trend, that it has been like that since Nigeria became a federal republic, and also since PDP had taken power since 1999. Obasanjo never took the dollar from where he picked it and left it there. The same thing with Jonathan, and then the progression continues. How do you react to this? Why is the Naira what it is as we have it now?
Well, thank you. I want to thank Sheikh Mishowumi. He's a good friend. At least it's good that he's also contributing to the body of knowledge, to ensure that the APC government succeeds. That's the way to go when people who are in opposition are able to point out 1 or 2 things. But again, to the point of information, he may not be having the kind of information that is ongoing now, in-house, to see how they can arrest the drift in the economic space. Talking about Naira and dollars, the government has already set up, committees and, bodies that will sit down to look at some of the economic indices and all of that and see how they can mitigate them. The Tax Reform Committee has just submitted a report 2 days ago, and they are still continuing to see how they can deepen the conversation around the tax reforms. The issue of dollar and Naira, the CBN, the new team, has also commenced the process of seeing how they can also mitigate that. You see, one thing we must bear in mind is that government is going to take a deliberate and conscious effort to criminalize the use of foreign currency in this country. Because one of our problems is actually the fact that the economy has been dollarized. And there are some schools that pay in dollars now. There are some accommodations you pay in dollars. There are so many other things that people want to pay in dollars. I think the president has the courage to put a halt to that so that you promote your your own currency, your legal tender, the Naira. If you don't do that, you cannot put Naira and dollar to be in competition. A foreign currency whose production you are not in charge of, and you have to put it in competition with your own Naira. No. I know that the president has got the courage, the boldness, and the ability to put a halt to that so that every transaction in Nigeria has to be in Naira and not in dollar. Because when you say, when we're talking about dollar, it is an elite problem. The poor man in the village doesn't deal with dollars. It's the rich people like Shewumi and others who will go to the market and mop up this dollar, and before you say Jack Robinson, the dollar will be scarce. The only reason why it is going to be because it is scarce and people need it. That's what they use. That is the language of corruption. They mop up dollar when they want to go and bribe people. They use dollar because when they carry naira, they feel that it will be too bogus. And so all of these conversations, the president is aware, and in a matter of weeks, you will begin to see the impact. Not necessarily even taking money to say you want to saturate the economic space. No, they are going to take deliberate and conscious steps to ensure that we criminalize dollar and ensure that we do our transaction with naira in this country. That's another side. So, thirdly, you have to understand that problems, once you know a problem, finding solution to it is also another. Now, in economics, it is difficult for you to have an end solution. End solution, I say this is the only solution you can do. Economics, I tell people, is all about trial and error. I said this in one platform just 3 days ago. Somebody wanted to crucify me. No. Economic policies are just a matter of projections. They are a matter of suggestions and all of that. If you put them into practice and they are not yielding grounds for what you want to see in the economy, you change your tactics. There are no fixed destination for economic solutions. If you put 10 economists in this room now to discuss about Nigerian problem, they will come up with 10 different ideas on how to recover the economy. That means there are no fixed destinations. But even if you look at the global space, it's the same thing. Things are getting difficult in UK. Things are tough in America. But they have the buffer, to absorb some of these things. Ours is still a work in progress. So the good thing for me is that we have a president who understands that there are issues and is getting the right people to speak to those issues, and at the appropriate time we begin to see the dividends yielding for us.
All right, let's come back to the studio quickly to get some more contributions from Jide Ologun here. In terms of reforms, now, of course, the legal distractions are over. It's time for governance head on. But there was a point the Supreme Court made about the IREF portal that, yes, it's an ideal, that it enhances the confidence of the public in INEC if it works. But, the fact that it fails, or it failed at the point, does not stop the collation, the manual collation. But in terms of future elections, what are your expectations in, strengthening our electoral processes?
I have mentioned that the National Assembly may again look at the electoral laws that we have and be more specific. It's not subject to consistent debate that INEC still has discretion on the deployment of these technological devices. So if INEC comes out to say, we will do this, can you hold them down on that promise, on the strength of the law? I mean, we just came back from the Supreme Court now. It's a place where it's about the laws. So how can we now amend? If, for instance, there's a provision that election results must be transmitted real time within 30 minutes, if not, they start, be specific. And having said that, you look at the global environment. Do we have the facilities to even deploy these electronic devices in our elections? And again, what the Supreme Court said is that the IREV may not earn the full trust of citizens, but it is not a collation device. It is like a warehouse where these results are transmitted. And I really appreciate what Mr. Showumi said. The Supreme Court said that you are expected to have your election officers at the polling units, that you have access to the final results. So what happened to that? It is in the absence of that, you may now begin to look towards the IREF. But these are practical issues for politicians. And I hope that they learn. And of course, the science of politics that Mr. Showumi introduced. Because if you go back now to really evaluate calmly, then you may be able to tell why PDP did not perform as PDP expected. If 5 of your major stakeholders stand against you, Amos chapter 3, verse 3, Amos 3:3 says, can two work together except they be agreed? Well, that is for them. And now, speaking beyond electioneering and elections and things like that, I want to address the government. Congratulations to our President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's now time for governance. And what is my advice? The President, by Section 5 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 as amended, has the executive power that he can deploy through the Vice President, the ministers, and other functionaries of government. Please hold them responsible and engage them resourcefully to deliver in the country. And beyond the aides and those that we have, the office of the president is so exalted that he can assess support. For instance, when you talk about human resources management, you have the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria that can help to advise on how to maximize the human resources productively in the country. When you talk about public relations in government, crisis management, being proactive, working on your environment, you have the Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, you have the accountants and all of them that you can bring together to advise. But beyond that, let us implement. And again, I'm advising the president now, can you please, sir, invite your key stakeholders that will support you in this governance team and try to understand the spirit of Section 14 to Section 18 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. If the provisions there are implemented up to 65%, and I echo that, 65%, Nigeria should become the third richest country in the world. These are issues. Can you sit down? Look at what Sheikh Zayed did in the United Arab Emirates to translate a desert to an earthly paradise. Can you bring your team together to study Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore? Singapore left Malaysia in 1965. Today, it is one of the best countries to live and to work in the world. Then can you again look at our resources? I'm going to an area that may not be populous with some stakeholders now, which is this resource management through federalism. Nigeria is over-resourced. When you talk of, we have the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa, the oil, every energy mix we have in the country. So how do we ensure that it's not just that Ondo State, for instance, cannot appropriate the bitumen, which is the second largest deposit in the whole world, because of this exclusive legislative list? How can we ensure that we begin to tap into these resources to generate common wealth for common good? And again, let me touch something sensitive. Mr. Afegwa mentioned it. The will and the zeal and the courage to implement our laws. Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1990 as amended says that the state shall, not may, abolish corrupt practice and abuse of office. Who are the oil thieves who plunder our resources? Who are they? Who are the sponsors of terrorism against the land, of these bandits? You go after them or they paralyze your government. It's as simple as that. You see, so why do we have all this? Then again, something that is critical. When you study industrialization, electricity, energy is a crucial the pump price of diesel, of petroleum, then this is a huge threat to our economic activity. So when you approach these cases pragmatically, I did a study on Lee Kuan Yew, and the magic of Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. Pragmatic approaches, right. And if all these are done, then we can go back to this man, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria. I was monitoring him when the elections were coming up, right from the time he went in to tell the former president who was stepping in. Despite all the controversies, he was rated as someone who transformed Lagos. Now, Nigeria is a bigger spectrum. But with your team, you can replicate that. And when life becomes meaningful for citizens,
Right.
then who wants to continue to will? And that is my counsel this morning, that beyond politics, please step into good governance.
All right.
Very quickly, let me get to Mr. Segun Showomi and this way of calling it a wrap on the show because of our limited time. A chieftain, well, we've heard of the previous administrations where when one party emerges winner of an election, oppositions or some people will raise some invectives and all of that, and some would even say we will make Nigeria ungovernable for the ruling party. We don't want to see the opposition do this. So in this wise, would you be advising the candidates of the PDP, your candidates, one whom you've always supported, right from many years, to call Asiwaju and congratulate him and also offer him, because they've been friends for years, so to also offer him quality advice, which policies which he hitherto would have done if he were president?
You have asked a very serious question. I wrote a piece a couple of days ago where I called it Atiku Abubakar, the man in the arena. If you get a piece of that piece, it was used in the media. I think This Day Online used it. You will see what I said there. But having said that, what I believe is that I know that Atiku's heart bleeds and really has love for the country. And I feel that he's going to interpret his next set of action based on how he reads what is in the best interest of the country. You can't rush it. We can only wait. After all, I've offered congratulations publicly. That's a bit of thawing of the ice. And I've also insisted that the president cannot be saying shenanigans to people who went to court. They can take that back a bit. Nobody should behave in a manner as though the collective knowledge, intelligence, structure, goodwill, access of all players is not needed, especially at these critical times. And I really tried to say that you should not be too parochial. If you have a balanced cabinet, you deepen the contribution, you stimulate the contribution of forces that are behind each of these people and each of these, race and tribes and all that in such a way that they come in. But if you have a scenario where people are thinking that the Lagos boys are suddenly the only wise men in the country, people can be like this. People can step back. People can take the US. The man was saying something, my brother was saying something that they are going to do a policy
I want to accommodate your colleague there in the studio. That's Mr. Fegba. I want to accommodate him. If you could just wrap up your thoughts, Mr. Showomi, in 10 seconds.
Say that, well, Nigerians, it's time to try and focus on the country. Nobody is going to help us to fix our land apart from us. We may have our reservation, but we shouldn't be too angry and we should not go and do things that are untoward. Democracy is an ideal, and that ideal is still alive in the country.
Right. Mr. Fegba, your final thoughts. The Labour Party has said it will carry on its engagement, so to speak, on the front burner of the public, saying it leaves its case now with the public court, the court of the public opinion, so to speak. What would be your final submissions in this regard?
Well, the Labour Party has a right to do whatever it deems fit. That is their own business. My own concern now is about helping government to deepen conversation towards building a national cohesion. We need to rally around all the forces, centripetal and centrifugal, to create the aggregate balance that would, facilitate the will of progress in the country. We are conscious of the fact that the president inherited both assets and liabilities. That much he has said. We are also conscious of the fact that we need people, we need ideas, we need creativity to think outside the box, to generate the right solutions that to mitigate all the problems confronting us. It is not yet Uhuru. It is the responsibility of the presidency, of Nigerians, all of us, civil society and what have you, to ensure that whatever good we are able to do for our country is for our country. If the country fails, we fail. If the country succeeds, we all succeed. That sense of collective responsibility is what should be needed at this point to be able to drive the wheel of progress in the next 4 years.
Thank you so much, Kasim Afegbo, as well as Segun Shomi, for your contributions. You stayed put, all through the program, all right there from our Abuja studios. And here in Lagos, Jide Ologun, thank you very much. Public affairs analyst and legal practitioner, we thank you all for your contributions on the show today.